Hey guys, it's Mike here. Today I'm going to be giving you my top 5 tips for recording rock guitars. Check it out. When it comes to recording rock guitars, I have to say I really believe that less is more. It's become a modern trend to layer a lot of guitar tracks one after the other, sometimes 10 or 15 takes of the exact same guitar with multiple different microphones put in front of the amplifier and DIs to try and capture as many different versions and then fix it in the mix. So when I'm talking about less is more, I'm really referring to that heavy rock-based rhythm guitar sound. When you're talking about lead guitar, sky's the limit with lead guitar because you can have multiple different tracks playing all sorts of different lead lines and melodies. In my opinion, rock guitars captured and recorded correctly should mean that you don't need tons and tons of different tracks to get a really heavy, big sounding, awesome take. So today I'm holding the Gibson Les Paul. The reason I've got this one to start with is because the Les Paul style guitar has featured on many famous rock recordings, and one of the main reasons is because of the type of pickups in the guitar. Now, the Gibson Les Paul has what's called humbucker pickups. Put simply, humbuckers have a higher output, they are louder, they are great for heavy, hard rock. They have I guess you could say they have a bit more of a bigger bass response as well. So when you're going for that sort of palm muting, metal sort of sound, humbuckers are a lot more forgiving with that playing style. So when it comes to recording rock guitars, humbuckers in most cases are usually the go-to. Well, it wouldn't be a video about guitars if I wasn't showing you a few guitars. So now this one is, most of you probably know, is the Fender Stratocaster. I'm a huge fan of the Strat. It's a great all-rounder, and once again, even the Strat has appeared on countless famous rock albums. So when we're talking about pickups, the Strat has what's called single coil pickups. It gives you a fair bit of versatility, whether you're playing rhythm or lead, because you've got the different pickup selections. You can combine, the bridge and the neck, the neck and the bridge, etc., and get out of phase sounds as well. So you've just got a bit more of a wider range of tones to choose from. It has a very iconic sound as well. So many famous guitarists, from Jimi Hendrix to Clapton to even Kurt Cobain, believe it or not, played Fender Stratocasters as well. So when you're talking about versatility, and definitely with the pickup options available with Strats, you really can't go wrong. When you're recording guitars, the decision to go with recording an actual guitar amplifier or a cabinet, or going with a DI, which is a direct input into the to the preamp or the interface, however you're recording. In many cases, you can actually do both. If you set up your recording session correctly, you can actually send the signal of the guitar to both the microphone recording the amp or the microphones recording the amp, and send a signal to the DI as well. That's become quite a common way with modern digital recordings to capture guitars that way. Some of the reasons why you might choose amp over DI, when you're recording an amp, it's really important to note that putting a microphone in front of the amp is going to capture the sound of the amp in that room at that time. So the room is a big factor when you're recording. Recording DI has its limitations because it simply doesn't have the tone that an amp offers. Yes, there's a lot of options for reamping and plugins and things like that to really shape the sound once you've recorded the DI, but I'm a firm believer in capturing the sound you want at the start, which really lays that great foundation for your recording. Okay, so now I'm going to bring out a few microphones. Firstly, this one is the SM57. I've got a few of these. They are fantastic on guitar amplifiers and cabinets. They're great on snare drums as well. The SM57 is a dynamic microphone, so it's designed to capture really high sound pressure levels, and placed appropriately in front of your amplifier can really be a great all-rounder for recording guitars. This microphone here is the Shure SM7B. Traditionally, I guess you could call it a broadcast microphone. It was used quite often in voiceover recordings. It's used a lot for vocals. A lot of hip-hop guys use them because, once again, it's a dynamic microphone and it can handle a lot of energy in the recording. I really love the SM7B on guitar amps. The reason is I think it's got a great representation of the mid-range. So you get a nice rounded low to mid area when it comes to recording the guitar, and it really just captures a nice rounded tone. One small tip with this microphone, if you are going to use it, you do need a fair bit of gain to get the right sound out of it. So make sure you've got a good preamp or a cloud lifter to get enough level going into your recording. This little fella here is the Sennheiser E906. Fast becoming my go-to for recording guitars. Once again, I really love the mid-range of this one. It has a bit of a, I guess you could say, a throaty sort of sound. It's great for recording strats or jazz masters that are being recorded through a really clean amp, like a Fender amp or a Roland. It comes up really nice. So that's the Sennheiser E906. So once you've got your recording down, panning and multitracking is really where you can shape the biggest sound for recording rock guitars. Believe it or not, some of the heaviest and biggest sounding rock albums were recorded with only a couple of guitars panned left and right. So when I say that, I'm referring to sort of really sort of heavy rhythm style guitars. You don't need 15 tracks panned left and right to get a big sound. If it's recorded properly, you can capture that sound appropriately with only a couple of tracks. You need to remember when you're recording that you've only got a certain amount of room in the frequency domain. So if you're recording 40 guitars, they're all operating in generally the same frequency spectrum, so they're all going to be struggling to find room in the mix. So unless you've got a strategy to sort of filter out certain frequencies or drastically change the tone of each guitar so it's not overlapping, you're going to have a lot of problems getting a big sound because it's just going to sound really squashed and jumbled up. So getting back to panning, hard panning left and right, the multi-tracks of the guitar, one of the most common ways to get a really wide stereo image, and it just sounds like this really big wall of sound with your guitars. If you pan them left and right, really simple trick. If you've got multiple guitars, you can even pan some slightly left and slightly right, and other rhythm tracks panned even wider, sort of hard left and hard right. So there's a few ways you can approach it, but that's generally a really good starting point. Finally, we come to what I think is probably the most important aspect of recording rock guitars, and that is the performance. You can have all the right equipment, you can be in the greatest recording studio in the world, you can have all the famous amplifiers, but if your performance isn't right, the recording is not going to be right. So I think generally when you're talking about recording sessions, being well prepared, if you're a guitar player and you're going in to record, know your parts really well and know what works in the song and what doesn't. Once you're in the studio, you don't want to start the process of experimenting with guitar sounds and tweaking amp settings or completely changing your approach. You really want to be at a point where you know exactly what your sound is, you know what you're going for, and you know how to reproduce it in the studio. Well, I hope that's given you a brief overview of recording rock guitars. Remember to check out my website, mnproductions.com.au. I do have a hints and tips section where you can find a little more detailed information about recording guitars specifically. Feel free to drop me a line or send through a comment, and look forward to catching up with you soon. Cheers.